As soon as videotape left the factory, it already started to break down. Information that is on the tapes is slowly dying, and if we don't preserve them, important historical content that's contained on them will be lost forever.
What is MIPoPS?
What is MIPoPS?
What is MIPoPS? MIPoPS stands for Moving Image Preservation of Puget Sound.
What MIPoPS does for the general public of the Pacific Northwest is provide access to digitized content.
Our mission is to raise awareness about the magnetic media crisis, the alarm that the Association of Moving Image Archivists sounded to sort of bring awareness to the urgency of digitizing videotape.
Audiovisual Archive in Australia has put a deadline of 2025 to say, if you don't have your magnetic material digitized by this time, you're screwed. They're figuring out the actual date, and it's right around the corner.
Within 20 to 30 years of the time it's created, it's disintegrating.
The magnetic media crisis is sometimes called a gathering storm because the deterioration of the actual analog videotapes and then the increasing obsolescence and rarity of the players that play them back.
So video is a little bit different from film in that video went through all these different iterations, all these different formats for consumer purposes, for broadcast purposes, whereas film, there were consumer formats, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, but the principle of film has stayed pretty consistent. And video requires all these different players.
A lot of the formats that we work with stopped being manufactured years ago. And so we have to make sure that we take good care of them and tune them up, clean them, because a lot of the parts and players are getting harder and harder to come by, and so are the people who actually work on them. They're a dying breed, if you will.
In some cases, people thought they were creating preservation copies by putting film onto videotape. In fact, that was not a great idea. Film is actually quite stable.
The thing about older media types like film and negatives is that they are stable. 30 years from now, you're going to be able to view them.
100-year-old nitrate film, in some cases, is still around and looks gorgeous. Whereas a video, for its manufacture, had a completely different purpose. It was more of a kind of democratizing format for shooting.
It was a lot cheaper than film, so not only were professionals using it, but also amateurs and just the average person was able to buy videotape and record.
There was plenty of access. You could watch your VHS tape of a film, but now that VHS tape needs a lot of help. We have to keep up. We can't just sort of settle back and say, okay, we're finished. Despite the fact that we're working with old materials that have their fixed content, the way we view that material, the way we store that material is going to just keep changing and evolving.
A lot of the time, videotape is capturing real people doing real things. That might sound personal and boring, but it really encompasses so much of Seattle and Seattle's history that it's valuable to the general public and great for them to be able to access it. The public is able to see files digitized at MIPoPS on Internet Archive, where we create collections for each group so that they can, based on that institution, go in and view the content on their personal computer.
And the way that I got involved in black history was there was a white guy that I worked with by the name of Henry Cody. And Henry would oftentimes come to work and tell me about different people out of black history. And one of the first people he told me about was Henry O. Flipper, who in 1877 became the first African-American to graduate from the West Point Military Academy. And when he went there for 4 years and no one ever spoke to him. And I was inspired by the fact that, of knowing something so beautiful, but at the same time I was appalled and embarrassed that this white man knew more about my history than I did. So I felt compelled to do something about it. Let me tell you the significance of that, because I believe history helps to value our lives. I was driving down the road the day after Halle Berry and Denzel won the Oscar, and Dory Monson was on his radio program, and he was talking about how pathetic Halle Berry sounded in her acceptance speech. And then, of course, all the callers were calling up talking about how pathetic she sounded, and I just about couldn't take any more of this, so I felt the need to call in upon him. And what I called in to tell him is that while he's looking at her acceptance speech as just being that, I said, you need to understand the historical accomplishment of what happened before you can understand her acceptance speech. And again, this is part of us knowing our history and embracing it. So I had to tell him that in 1940, the first African-American to ever win the Oscar was Hattie McDaniel for her role in Gone with the Wind. And then the first African-American to even be nominated for Best Actress was Dorothy Dandridge, whom Halle Berry played. The first African-American male to ever be nominated was Sidney Poitier in 1956, and then ultimately to win the Best Actress Award in 1963 for Lilies of the Field. And then the second African-American female to ever win was Whoopi Goldberg, and that was 54 years after Hattie McDaniel. And so then when you come to that night, it wasn't that Halle Berry was crying because she won, as most white actresses were. She was crying because she realized that she had lifted a 74-year yoke off the neck of black women who had been actresses. And so again, that's the importance of history. Now, if you're not careful with history, people will define who we are as a people. Now, I want to give you this example of what our children are learning. And the more they go through society, the less they seem to learn about our history. And if we as black folks think that we embrace our culture, then why are we allowing our children to go to school that's basically a Eurocentric form of education that teach them nothing beautiful about themselves? Let me just take this example. Here's 4 textbooks. The most recent one is copyrighted in 1994. The latter is copyrighted in 1863. Now, it's a commonly known fact that the first person to die in defense of this country was who? Crispus Attucks. Let me show you how history will treat us, how history has treated us. We've already seen it with Cleopatra, because now most of us are thinking that she's what, Elizabeth Taylor. But now, look at this well-known fact. 1863, what does it say? Crispus Attucks was what? The first to fall. There is no doubt about it. He was the first to die, the first to defy, and the first to die in defense of this country. Now look at the textbook in 1950. 1950, same thing. The first civilian killed, Crispus Attucks, no doubt about it. But now take a look at the book that was copyrighted in 1990. What does it say? He's not the first no more, he's just among those. Now look at the book in 1994. 5 men, including Attucks. Now 20 years from now, they don't even mention his name. But this is what will happen if we allow folks to define who we are in history. Now, I don't know if you all have gone through the history of Black History Month, how February became Black History Month, and I've yet to do a presentation without giving honor to this man, because through our ignorance, and I ain't say stupidity, just through our ignorance, sometimes we blame white folks for things we shouldn't blame them for. February, they gave us the coldest and shortest month out of the year. So I think it's imperative that we talk about how February became Black History Month. There was a child born in New Canaan, Virginia in 1875, and for the first 20 years of his life, he couldn't go to school. He had to stay at home and help support his family, seeing as though his family had just come out of slavery with the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865. At the age of 20, with no formal education, it took him less than 2 years to graduate high school. He went to Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, went to the University of Chicago, and in 1912, this child received a PhD from Harvard University. This marked the first time and the only time in the history of our country that a black person who was a direct descendant of slaves had ever received a PhD, and he got that PhD from Harvard. The man that I'm talking about is Dr. Carter G. Woodson. A renowned historian, a renowned educator, Dr. Woodson understood the importance of our history. So in 1915, he founded a group called the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. In 1921, he founded a group called Associated Publishers, and these two groups, they had 4 goals. One was to promote the writing and research, and I don't know what just happened to my PowerPoint. Okay. One is to promote the writing and research of African American history. The second one was to promote the publishing of quality black information, because many times publishing companies were owned by folks other than us, and if they chose not to publish anything quality about us, they simply didn't do it. The next thing he wanted to do was to promote the study of African American history in our schools, colleges, universities, churches, fraternity groups, sorority groups, workplace. But the most important place he wanted us to study African American history is in the home. I would probably attest that most of our children, most of your children, probably were not taught academia African American history. Most of us didn't learn. But before I put that condemnation on you, I'll simply put it on me. I know my mother and father never taught me anything about African American history because they didn't know from an academia standpoint. The next thing he wanted us to do was to promote the collection of African American history. The most shining example of that is a library in New York City called the Schomburg Library. It serves as this country's single greatest literary source for housing African American history. But now the question is this: why should we as black folk have a Black History Month? And we have all the answers. If you don't know where you're going, how could you know where if you don't know where you're being, how you know where you're going? But I moved beyond that, and I moved beyond that for a personal reason. I kept asking myself, why is it important that we say, oh, it's the first black to do this, the first black man to do this, the first black, why is that so important? I don't hear nobody else saying that. But why with us? Why are we so concerned about any accomplishment that black folks do? History. Let us take a look at how history throughout this country has defined us as a people.
And the majority of these, well, actually all of these kids have been really, with the exception of one, have only been tapping for less than 1 year. But you know, that's what Black History Month is all about. It's not only talking about our past, but it's talking about our present and our future. And it's talking about investment in our future. When I see young people who are tapping like that, it's a continuation of that legacy. You know, next I'm going to have the actual Rhythm Tap Company come up. And these are young people who have actually been tapping a little bit longer. The majority of these kids have been tapping for at least 3 years. Come on up, ladies. And they're very dedicated to this art. They have had opportunities to tap with legends such as Savion Glover. Last year we had an experience that was out of this world. We were in Minneapolis for the Minneapolis Tap Festival, and they had a tapping of the legends at that time. And our kids was given an opportunity to meet the Nicholas brothers who were in town and actually take master classes from them. And it was just it was really an experience to listen to these old time tappers talking about their experiences through tap dancing. The Rhythm Tap Company, you guys gonna do Alligator Alley? Okay. Once again, this is Tap Central, the Rhythm Tap Company, and they're comprised of youth from ages 8 to 14.
Welcome to Late Night Teen Talk Show. Tonight we'll be talking about the subject of music, and my name is Tracy Armour. I'm a writer for The Flavor magazine. On the panel are various artists from all over Seattle, and they're all unique in their own musical way, and their experiences in music, I should say. First of all, we got my man D-Max. We got my man D-Max here. He's a lead singer for the group Buddha, and is currently working on his demo that'll be out in the fall, hip-hop demo. Secondly, we have my man MC Wild J. Okay, writer and performer. He has a lot of experience in the music business, including working with the group Third Level on their current single. She's doing it too. A cut on the current album. I'm sorry. And my man B Mello here on the end, who is a hip hop DJ. And DJs at KCMU for Rap Attack. He's a staff writer also for The Flavor magazine, and also has mixes on KUGS in Bellingham, Chaos, KAOS, Olympia, and CFRO, Vancouver, BC, in Canada. Okay, and so pretty much we're going to be just talking about hip-hop music and that sort of thing. So.
I just feel that hip-hop has a real big influence on people, as far as kids and as far as adults. It's a form of communication. As far as the youth, I see they really need direction, because there's not any role models right now that are really. I mean, there's some out there, but I would say like people aren't looking at as rap as a role model type thing, but it is, because they're like prophets, pretty much. You know, I mean. They're bringing forth a lot of prophecies, and it's going on. They're telling you about what's going on in California, what's going on all over the world, the racism, the two nations, the way the U.S. is split. It really is. It's split because there's a black and there's a white side, or a minority or a white side. And it's like, I think people need to understand that there is intelligence in hip-hop. There's intelligence in all sorts of music, but I'm saying hip-hop is an intelligent source of communication, and it does enhance a person's growth mentally. Mentally, it really does. It keeps you aware and abreast of what's going on in reality around you, you know? That's the way I feel.
That's cool. That's cool. You have anything to say?
Definitely, yeah. I think hip-hop recording artists, them and maybe sports figures are like the main role models or influences that young children have, especially with TV and cable, you know, all the different channels. So, you know, that's who they look up to. Like he said, you know, they see him wearing something, then they're like, oh, I got to get that or this and that. But, you know, the bad and the good influences come along with that.
Okay. So the way you guys are talking, it's quite obvious that hip-hop gets all over, and a lot of people are into hip-hop. What do you guys think some of the biggest misconceptions about hip-hop music are?
Well, a lot of people think that it's because you rap and all that you're going to break out and start talking about some vital parts of a lady, start talking about how to load and unload a 9 and how to sling crack. But, you know, it depends on who you're listening to. You know, some of the rappers that I hear today deserve to be banned, you know, because there's a lot of disrespect going on. And that's one of the biggest things that I see that's missing out of our communities today is respect. You know, and if you're doing it in a blunt mass figure like that, you know, you can't do nothing except send off the wrong message.
Well, I keep going back to it. It's just like people have the misconception that rap is not intelligent and that it doesn't have a voice. But it does, because it's a part of American culture. You know, it's a part of the world's culture right now. It's all over the world. So it's a real important thing. It's something to be listened to, because most hip-hop is coming from an oppressed side of it's people who have been, you know, kept out of the limelight of things, you know, kept out of you know, being able to say what they want to say or do what they want to do, and because of the way society wants things to be ran. But I feel that's a misconception, that, you know, we just don't have a voice, but it does. And if you would listen, you know, if you would listen to someone that's really talking some serious, you know, talking about some real issues, you would say, hey, this guy's really intelligent. He's talking about something that really means something. You know, talk to me after the show. I'll tell you some groups. You know, I'll let you know. You know, because the commercial rap, You know, the stuff you get on MTV, a lot of times it's not the groups that are really making an impact. They're like salted down versions of what's real, you know, because the real people didn't want to deal with the labels and how they were running things and how they're putting their music out. They want it to come out real. And MTV doesn't want that. They don't want the real. They want someone to play like they're, you know, doing this or portray something that they really don't even know about. But, you know, that's what it is. It's a misconception of what real rap is and what their job and their goal is.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely record companies, they want something that's marketable, you know, that they can sell. They're selling a product, so, you know, they're going to take somebody. If they're not what they want, they're going to try to make you what they want.
Exactly.
And I think if you're in the public eye, you have a responsibility to the public, you know, but at the same time, you know, with all the positive stuff, you know, you're talking about, but at the same time, if you live in foul,
you
know, then you should rhyme about that or whatever, express how you're living.
Be true.
You know, if you're not doing whatever, then don't even touch upon it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know, if you ain't out there catching bodies, if you ain't smoking nobody, don't talk about it.
Exactly.
Actually, I like to
doing
add something to that. Even if you are out there smoking somebody, and even if you are out there slinging drugs or whatever, you know, whoever that individual is that's doing that, you know, before they, you know, display the glory of it, because actually there ain't no glory in smoking nobody. I don't believe anybody in the world is made of that type of conscience. You know, they need to talk about their inner feelings of how they felt after they smoked somebody, not, hey, I'm out here in the limelight and I'm smoking somebody, you know, and I got the juice now. They don't need to talk about that. They need to figure out, you know, hey, this young man might see what I'm doing or hear me and what I'm saying right now, and I might be motivating him that particular way to go out there and smoke somebody that just did some little tiny harm to him, you know. And they need to pop out a solution, especially if they're in the public eye.
Yeah, I could see where B Mello is coming from too, you know, because let's put up NWA, for example. They're you know, I mean, they're not from the street. Most of the members aren't from the streets, but there's a few that are, and I mean, they're expressing something that's real to them. And I mean, like I said in the beginning, it's a form of expression, and if it's good or bad to you, that's their expression. So, and I think it should be, you know, you have to tell kids what's right and what's wrong, but don't hide it. You know, if there's something wrong going on, you tell them it's wrong, but don't hide it, because you're only making things worse by hiding it. You know, we all know that. You turn your back on a problem, it's only, when you turn back around and look at it, it's only going to be twice as big. So it's like, you know, you have to confront issues, and those issues need to be confronted.
Yeah, there's no glorification in like shooting somebody or whatnot.
But
you know, you shoot somebody, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
You know, I know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I know.
Yeah, you're telling them the truth, but you did it, so you can tell somebody you did it. That's nothing wrong with that. And you tell them what happens when you do it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Tell them the full story, and they're going to see how, you know, how things turn out when you want to, you know, gangbang.
All right, real quick then, you guys are talking about the state of hip-hop. A lot of people aren't as into hip-hop as you guys are, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, could you like break down real quick what's going on in the hip-hop nation in '93, like right now as we speak, you know, because as it changes, you know, and it grows, you know, what's going on right now?
Right now, the direction is a problem. That's why it comes shopping right now. What I mean by shopping, like shopping a particular artist has been kind of hard, especially coming out of Seatown. And the direction is kind of lost because they don't really know what to make an artist do, you know. I've been in the studio with producers, and they turned around and told me, well, you need to cuss a little bit, and I had to buck up off of it. Because the fact is, that ain't what I'm about, you know.
Exactly.
If my little nephew gonna turn me on the radio, he ain't gonna hear Uncle saying stuff that I don't let him say.
Exactly.
You know?
Be true. Be true. I hear you.
So how do you feel, man? How do you feel about hip-hop right now, dude?
I feel hip-hop, it's making a big impact on what's going on in society. You know, you see your kids walking around, you say, what's going on with your pants, you know? Why you gotta wear your pants down that low, you know? They're looking at a lot of stuff that's going on. You know, not every hip-hopper wears his pants on the ground, but, you know, MTV, they'll have crisscross flipping and doing all that, you know. But you know, it's a phase, you know, like everybody else goes through. We all go through these little phases. Society's going through it. You know, we're kind of retro now, you know, and we'll always be that way. We'll always be, it's a cycle. But I feel that hip hop it's doing its thing. It's making its rounds like bebop, you know what I mean? It's real strong, and it's real heavy, and it's real spontaneous. It's doing a lot of things that you don't plan on, you know, that you don't know about. You're just questing. You know, you're trying to flip off something new, a new style, not trying to go off the next man. And I think that's live, because improvising is what it's all about. You know, in life, being able to adjust to different things. And that's what hip hop brings to the musical arena. It brings in some serious competition, and it brings in flavor, you know. It's live. You know, it's good for everybody to do it, you know, get around it and listen.
This next keynote speaker graduated from high school in Waycross, Georgia, attended Howard, began his career as a writer and actor. The Rose McClendon Players in Harlem in 1939. He most recently appeared in films The Miss Evers Boys, Dr. Mr. Davis appeared in such films as The Cardinal, The Hill, Scalp Hunters, and if I'm not mistaken, that's also where he met his wife. Ossie Davis and his wife Ruby Dee have produced several television specials, including Today Is Ours, Martin Luther King, The Dream in the Dream, and 2 segments of A Walk Through the 20th Century with Bill Moyers. Mr. Davis has received many honors and citations, including the New York Urban League Frederick Douglass Award, the NAACP Image Award, the National Medal of Arts, and most recently to both him and Ruby Dee, the Screen Actors Guild Life Achievement Award. He's the author of children's books, and he and Ruby Dee recently marked their 50th wedding anniversary. And they did this with the publication of their autobiography, With Ossie and Ruby, In This Life Together. He's also writing a play. I'm about to introduce him. Give me 1 second here. Please put your hands together for Mr. Ossie Davis.
Thank you. It's like coming home. As a matter of fact, from my feelings, I know that I am home, and I appreciate the expression. I bring greetings from various segments of my family. My wife is somewhere in Mount Vernon with the mayor today, celebrating what is left of African American History Month or whatever it is. But I also bring greetings from somebody else who is a little higher on the authority chain, and that's my mother. Mama is 103. So Mama doesn't make house calls anymore. But I asked her, you know, once I said, Mama, I'm going all the way out to Seattle. She said, you are? I said, yeah. I So I said, now what should I tell the people when I get to Seattle? He said, well, tell them what I told you. It's all right to get old, but don't get ugly. I said, Mama, I'm doing the best I can. We also, Ruby and I, have the advantage of having people come into our lives and they don't leave, they stay forever, really. There's a young lady here, you know, who got to be our daughter, really. And then Ruby did a play out here. So this young lady came out to be with Ruby for a while, and something happened. She saw something out here that she liked very much, and she decided that she had to leave the home we had for her in New Rochelle and come out here. We never knew exactly what it was. Maybe it was rain. But Mama particularly told me to tell Sharon Arthur, you know, hello, because when Mama was 100, Sharon was the person who put down the computers and the pencils and the papers and went into the kitchen and come back with some magic that still got our mouths smacking all over the place. Sharon Arthur, would you stand up at the top like that? You know, and since I've been here, Willie and Mike and everybody gone out of their way to make me feel welcome, and truly, I do appreciate that very much. I congratulate you, I congratulate the members of the union, longshoremen, for this extraordinary and very important occasion, this combining the history of black people with the history of labor, since in essence the two are really one. And it doesn't hurt us to stop every now and then and remember some of the basic circumstances which brought us to this country in the first place, which determined our reception once we got here, and which even now makes us wonder whether sometimes black folks ain't still up for grabs. So, in order to protect ourselves, we have to once in a while, you know, stop and take stock. Let's remind ourselves. Let's remind ourselves, you know, how it was that we got here in the first place, when we were invited to come over to America and participate in the great democratic experiment. You know how it was. We were in Africa having the time of our lives, sitting under banana trees and coconut trees, not doing anything, not bothering anybody, but they said, y'all come on, we need some help. We need some labor over here. And so we decided in the neighborly spirit to come over. And of course, once we got here, they showed us where we live, down by the river and the mosquitoes and the various other places. But we came here as labor. Everybody knew that from the get-go. We were labor. We were specifically labor. We were slave labor. Slave labor, you know, you didn't get a damn thing, you get a dime. And we work hard night and day to help to build this country into what it is right now. And that's slave labor. And I never got nothing out of being black and picking cotton down in Waycross, Georgia. You know. But we came to this country as a part of labor. That was our cultural identification. We were tied to cotton, tobacco, sugar cane, and various other forms of hard labor, which was imposed on us without any pay. And that's the way it was with us Now, although slavery is hard, and it is not a very pleasant situation, one thing about slavery, you don't have to worry about unemployment. There's always a job next door if we want. So, and we knew that, you know, slave labor, but we didn't have to worry about it at all. That as long as we picked cotton, you know, the old captain would give us just enough to keep us alive, but he wouldn't let us starve. So we had a place in the American economy. We were at the bottom, but damn it, there we were. Nobody was going to run us out. Well, we had a big to-do, which they called the Civil War. Now, the Civil War really was a war about labor. The truth of the matter is that the South, having access to free labor, for a while had an arrangement with the North that didn't have slavery, so that they sort of split the country in half. The South had slave labor, and the North had what they then called free labor. Well, that lasted for a while, and then the Supreme Court and Dred Scott decision and others kicked that out. In other words, they finally arranged so that a Southerner or anybody else could take his slave labor any place he wanted to go and work him in any part of these United States. Well, you can imagine what would happen to the workers in free labor in New York and in Philadelphia, Chicago, and Detroit if somebody could come into your community and work right next to the work that you did, somebody who was not even paid a penny. So this was a major question, and it really led to the Civil War. After the war was over, and we were ostensibly free, we thought we were for a while, they promised us 40 acres and a mule, and that sounded pretty good, you know, but somehow or other, that didn't happen either. So we graduated from slave labor to cheap labor. Now, no matter what the South felt about us even after we were free, we still were the ones who did the cotton picking and the planting and cooking the grits and getting Miss Ann and the children ready for school. As a matter of fact, if we sometimes tried to leave our jobs in the South, we were caught and put in prison and charged with some false crime, and we had to work our way toward freedom by providing cheap labor. And it wasn't the best kind of labor in the world, but it was cheap labor. And as long as we stuck to the formula, once again, we didn't have to worry too much about unemployment. We were employed even though we were cheaply employed. When we got rid of that arrangement, we came to the unskilled labor category. While the factories were beginning to burgeon and bloom up north, and the various economic institutions were being established, you know, we were assigned the jobs that didn't require much education or anything else. All we needed to have was strong back and hopefully a weak mind. And the economy had a nice place for it. But a short while ago, even within my own time, the nature of our economy began to change. It began to change from an economy that produced products and automobiles and bicycles and airplanes and things like that. It got to be a service economy, which is a different economy altogether. And while we had in the producers economy, we did have the unskilled labor category. And at that time, you know, 3 out of every 4 jobs in the black community were in the unskilled category. And although we didn't make much, we could take those few pennies we did make and build schools and churches and publish newspapers and magazines and establish black communities and go on. But now the truth of the matter is, there is now no place for unskilled labor, no place for cheap labor, no place even for slave labor. They got robots, they got computers, and they got high-tech equipment that's already committed to doing anything that you can do for absolutely nothing. Now, where does that leave us as black people? You know, what are they going to do with us? I go around to universities and campuses and various places like that, and I'm glad to see the young people there, particularly the young black people preparing themselves. But I also go around to prisons, and I see more ambitious, beautiful, bright young men sitting in prison. And I begin to suspect that since they don't need us now in the economy at all, they have finally decided that they're going to build enough prison to hold our asses. Now, what is our recourse? We have, you know, the choice. Are we just going to sit there? Are we going to pay our own way to the prison and beg them to let us in? Or are we going to remember who we are? Are we going to remember our history? Are we going to remember that our history is tied up intimately with the history of work in this country, and how on many occasions it was the unity of the black worker and the white worker that determined our fate in this country, including that time at the Civil War. What I'm saying to you is, what I truly appreciate about this day and this opportunity is this chance to remember once again that union that meant so much to us, that strength that we had as we joined hands, black and white together. Because I think the time has come when we've got to go back to the barricades one more time. That's right. We need each other now like we never needed each other before. But if you look, the jobs which we came all the way from Africa to 10 free, they're now taking them and sending them overseas. And we have to not only begin to speak for ourselves as workers here, but we got to, in order to protect ourselves as workers at all, begin to speak with authority for all the workers in the world. We cannot afford, we cannot compete, no matter what we do, with the poor women of Bangladesh who work, 12, 14, 16 hours a day for the little money that they get paid. And do you realize, according to the United Nations, recently, in terms of the count of the world population, we have 6,100,000,000 people with us on the planet now. Already, there are people who have no access to what they need to keep their families alive. And half the people in the world work for less than $1 a day. Now, is that going to happen to all of labor? Is that where the bosses want us all to go? So that we will all work for less than $2 a day? Or has the time come for us to do something about it? Has the time come for us to challenge those? The time come for us to say to those who are in the high executive chambers of Enron and other companies like that, countries which take the workers' money and rob them of it within our side. Are we going to sit still and let that kind of thing happen to us? Because if we are, then we might as well give up Labor Day, we might as well give up Black History Day, we might as well report back to the cotton plantation and say, although you ain't even got no cotton, I'll pick it for nothing. Or, in the name and image of a poet like Langston Hughes, who was a workers' poet, in the name and image of heroes like Harry Bridges and Paul Robeson, men who understood from the get-go how labor is the foundation of wealth, and labor deserves the first crack at what we call profits. We don't get, sometimes we don't get any of it, but believe me, none of it would be there except for our labor, our skill, our capacity to work. Now, so, my brothers and my sisters, I come to you with joy and excitement and thanksgiving and gladness to see you sit here, to hear you laugh together, to see and feel that you understand what the challenge is, and to know from your own history that you have the wherewithal to do what needs to be done, to put the marching feet of labor back in the streets, to challenge once again those who would destroy the country for their own greed, those who even now, after all these years, continue to rape the African continent so that countries that fought and died for their freedoms are now on the verge of going down the sinkhole because the profits from, the New World Order, is being built at their expense. No. We must build a world that is dedicated to the satisfaction of the needs of those of us who have worked to make it what it is. It is ours by right. We must stand strong as Paul would have us do, as Harry would have us do, as Langston would have us do, and as Mama would have us do. Take back our, thank you. Thank you for that.
If the world spent as much time talking to folks as they do talking about them, the world would be a better place to live in. I know it. You and I can join hands together and live in a better place. We want you to pray for somebody. If you never see them again in life, you may not know who they are, but I want you to pray for them today. Listen. If you see me, and I'm not walking right. Hey, Lord. If you see me, and I'm not talking right. I'm not talking right. I want you to do this for me. Sing, girl. Talking about out there. I'm not talking right. I'm not talking right. May not always say the right thing. Pray for me. Just pray for me. God is not through with me. don't know what we're singing about. But somebody told you about Jesus, whether you're living it or not. And I believe most of you are from the country somewhere. And you know how you ought to pray all the time. We want you to look at the person sitting next to you, whether you know him or not, and tell them like this. Join in and never sing this song. Hey, 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 hey. You pray for me. And I'll pray for you. Hey, 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 you pray for me. Pray for me. And I'll pray for you. I'm gonna pray for you. Hey, hey, pray for me. Pray for me. That's the way that God wants you and I to be. Hey, hey, hey. Say it one more time if you will. Stop talking about people and pray for them. Stop looking at them funny and start loving them. Let them know that God cares. And if nobody else is going to hold their hand, God is right there. He's just a word away. Thank you. God bless you. Pray for somebody.
I'm an MIXALOT. On the West Coast, drive big Cadillacs, no white paint job, the real in the back. Talk smack with the cannot game, but you got to have a brain, the computerized game. You get mad when the girl wants to play my song. You know you want to hear it, put the record back on that strip. Dress up, money cotton brother, and I hate polyester. Walking on the wild side, fully go snap. I know you get jealous cause I got it like that. Comes by the way, I'm a cellular phone, spend $100,000 on a brand new home. Dog in the front, God fence in the back. Freak by my side in the feline hat. That's my man. Red fence. My beat, so my girl by my side looking oh so sweet. Got me on my feet and gold on my neck. Cold, carry cash and I never write checks. They grow so big I can hardly hold it. You once had a dream that your grandma stole it. Looked in my eye, took my bank back. You ever wonder why I'm like that? Cause I'm ripping. That's my face. That's ripping. Try something different, check it out. But it's time to change. Not gonna get ill, but I'm gonna get strange. Punch your partner, throw him in the eye. I'm gonna kick it live with a square that side. That's my last name. Wanna get wild, freaks go insane. Rip it to the left, then rip it to the right. Gonna bust hardcore, I'm a prankster now. Your partner, give this space. Old girl, put the sucker in his place. Saturday week, I'm on vacation. Let's get live with a kid sensation. you'll get splashed. Check it out. Y'all want
and I'm going to go into the music aspect of it a little bit. And without, of course, you know, back in the day, we make do with what you have and what have you. So people started creating music, however they was creating music. So whether it's with your mouth or whether it was like scratching, the DJ, we made do and we came up with some beautiful stuff. So I'm going to introduce to you this next brother who has really innovated the style of music. He's known as the Human Orchestra. Y'all give it up for Mr. Kenny Muhammad.
Yeah.
Ass on.
y'all. Let me just tell y'all a little song about him and beatbox, you know?
First piece is called Haunted. I am haunted by images. The date, 1955, the setting, Selma, Alabama. I am standing between two water fountains. One is marked colored, where stained waters stir and creep forth from within, and one is marked whites only, where streams of luminous waters unite and burst forth into the bright daylight. I am colored and thirsty, yet very fair skin. Two fountains, each offering temporary relief, neither without compromised wounds or scars. I am haunted by images. The date, 1985, the setting, New York City. I am standing between two hospitals. One is Catholic, where viruses have been assigned morals and paintings of the Pope outnumber condoms 1,000 to none. And one is public, yet underfunded and overflowing with black and brown bodies. And I'm gay, white, and sick. With every breath, I trip the switches on the silent bombs now bursting within my blood. Two hospitals, each masquerading bad medicine as temporary relief, neither without compromised wounds or scars. I am haunted by images. The date, 1995, the setting, Houston, Texas. I am standing between two churches. One is full gospel Pentecostal and rooted in the black tradition, a tradition in which sweet honey and bitter homophobia flow from the same rock. And one is white and liberal, where pastors preach of a God who dwells within and loves me as I am. Yet it is both void of a choir and a cross. And I am black, gay, and spiritually bankrupt. Two churches, each offering up their own brand of temporary relief, one more earthly, one more heavenly, neither without compromised wounds or scars. I am haunted by images. The date, 2005, the setting, Seattle, Washington. I am standing between two restrooms. One marked men, one marked women. My bladder is full, and I am transgendered. Though my shell is female, my nature, being and knowing are fully male. Two restrooms, each offering temporary relief, neither without compromised wounds or scars. I am haunted by myriads of images, all offering temporary relief, none without compromised wounds or scars. This is for colored boys who consider suicide when the ways of this world were not enough. Going home. As a child, I often envisioned my own funeral. I'd be laid out like some rich white woman in a stunning casket, surrounded by pleasing flowers and poisonous people. Clocks would stop and stores would close in my honor. Colored folks would press their clothes and prepare tons of food for the services. White folks would dress in Chanel and Ralph Lauren. Flags would waver at half-mast, and buildings would be veiled in black bunting. Traffic would be backed up for miles and miles, with highway reader boards flashing, funeral procession in progress, slow-moving traffic next 3,000 miles. The processional would wind through the neighborhoods of all my enemies. My tormentors would be standing shoulder to shoulder, parade rest. They would all cry hollow tears, tears that would sting their flesh just as their words and actions and inactions had stung my whole being. Some would come seeking a glimpse of the one they had persecuted. Others would come seeking absolution. But none would be dispensed that day. The confessional was closed. This is the day of mourning. Excuse me. A sign outside the church would read, the decedent kindly requests that all ladies of birth and choice don hats. If some ladies had forgotten their hats or didn't own one, the Ladies' Relief and Women's Auxiliary Societies would make sure there were plenty to go around. Yes, hats, big hats. The kind of hats that let folks know you command respect, but most importantly, you've waited all week just to wear them. I hope in heaven boys like me get to wear hats. The music would be simple, nothing grand or ostentatious. That's what caskets are for. And of course, I would have written my own eulogy. It would read, this place just ain't safe for a fat, dark-skinned sissy like myself, so I've gone home to glory to reign with my Lord. See if you get there. The front pew would be reserved for a higher chorus of criers who would wail like they did at Golgotha. The sound would be deafening. They would wail so loud they would drown out the voices of all the black folks who told me I was not black enough because my parents were white. So loud it would drown out the voices of all the white folks who told me there were niggers and blacks, magnanimously reassuring I was a ladder. So loud it would drown out the voices of everybody who told me I was going to hell for kissing boys. And the silence of those who neglected to tell me I didn't have to kiss every boy who wanted to kiss me. So loud it would drown out the voices of everybody who labeled me gifted, articulate, or entertaining, all the while neglecting to see my frozen tears. Yes, this would be a day of wailing, at least for the higher chorus of criers. I'm on my way home. And when I get there, I'm gonna walk right up to the pearly gates where I'll be met by God Almighty himself. And he'll just what he's gonna say. Welcome home, my child. I hadn't expected to call you home so soon, but things weren't safe for you down there anymore. And I'll reply, yeah, you're telling me. But hey, did you see my funeral? Now that was fierce. Thank you. This last piece is a brief excerpt from a one sissy show that I'm writing that will come to the stage next May. It'll be May 18th and 19th. We'll be at the Broadway Performance Hall, and then in June we'll be at Rainier Beach Cultural, so look for it. Sitting in circles with rich white girls, memoirs of a bulimic black boy. I once begged a paring knife to steal my pulse from Jesus. Prayed an old frayed hanging rope would steal my breath from God. But salvation came in the form of a restroom stall. There I found shelter and self-preservation. Though merely 12 square feet and constructed of cold ceramic tiles and graffiti-resistant stainless steel partitions, it would become my safe harbor, a private sanctuary. In the beginning, I would seek it out for temporal confessions, a quick purge of shame and I'd be off. During the in-between times, I would use the grab rails to support past, present, and future sins. And during the bitter end, my body battered, broken, and anchors having given away, I simply mourned there. But most importantly, it was a restroom stall where I learned that when standing at the edge of the abyss, preparing to dive into a bottomless chasm, and retreat is not an option, then sitting down and dangling my feet over the edge is truly a form of self-preservation. Sitting in circles with rich white girls, memoirs of a bulimic black boy. Thank you much.
People wanna bust break Ain't trying to hear that.